at Truro School, it's time for World Aims and we're looking at survival challenges.
Survival challenges has been all about learning about disasters and what we would do to cope.
The aim of the exercise is to try and see how we can be better equipped to help those facing disasters and challenges in the global village, and to work alongside organisations who are doing an excellent job in doing just that. And then secondly, to see how we would face challenges that might come our way.
World Aims is very important to us here at Truro School. I strongly believe that in any good school, the curriculum has to involve issues that involve social justice, bringing boys and girls face to face with some of the realities that the world faces today. World Aims allows us to achieve that.
Doing Shelterbox.
If any of you got
we're
kids,
going to learn how to
set
up
at this point, being a dad, securing all those kind of disaster prone. So yeah, that's good. So protection, what's we got over here? What do you think? Blankets.
So this activity, you can see behind me and over there, that is being run by the response team members. This sort of activity now is really looking at shelter and also settlement. So rather than just thinking about the tent that we might be able to provide to families, it's a case of working through as a group in a scenario such as a disaster and thinking about where your preferred location would be.
If you're a vulnerable person, you need security, and that would be available at the plan site. So if you're worried about fighting and security, the plan site holds a better option.
The activity so far today is when people are in disaster zone, where they move around and which places they should go to and which would be the best place to go to and things like that.
I think there's quite a bit of teamwork involved, a lot of sort of communication and sort of reflection on really putting yourselves in the mind of someone else who may be affected. It's time for a bit of reflection, a bit of thought. If I was another person who was less fortunate, how would I fare?
It's tiny.
Pretty cozy.
A catastrophic event causing devastation on a national or international scale.
When something bad happens.
When something bad happens, okay? It could be.
I was caught up in the Christchurch earthquake in 2008, I think, and there was 118 people killed, and there were stories of people were getting the bus through the city, and all the buildings just fell on top of all these buses, and yeah.
It's a word that we use for all kinds of different things, isn't it? You know, I went to a party, it was a total disaster. I've got here my little disaster ranking pack, and I want you to put them in a diamond shape, with the worst one at the top, bad, but not as bad as that, kind of middling to bad, not so bad, probably haircut at the bottom there.
You live with your partner and 3 children. The rent is due tomorrow, but your wages will not be paid for another 3 weeks. You live with your partner and 3 children.
We're making decisions on how they affect people's lives. Like, forgetting to hand in your coursework won't really do much, so it goes at the very bottom. But then this one is pretty bad, because 3 children and another person and you is 5 people to feed, but you have no money and you have to pay for rent.
What the group are doing are imagining a disaster situation and writing down their responses to that. So they started off by creating a character, and then I told them that their character's involved with an earthquake. So now they're just writing in role as that character about what they have experienced and how they feel about it.
We were outside the apartment's entrance with all 100 floors towering above us. That is when the ground started to shake.
As I realized that it's an earthquake, I started running. I didn't see anything next to me. I just wanted to find a safe place.
I flinch as I hear young children trapped by fallen buildings. Everyone is screaming.
I can't believe what's happening. I hear the screams. I see the buildings crumbling. I can't believe what's happening.
I started to try and run to a safer place, but I felt terrible seeing all these desperate and injured people without helping them.
I smell fear all around me, people running and screaming.
I'm shaking with shock and unable to stay standing up without feeling dizzy or ill.
I thought it'd be quite nice to kind of describe what was happening and how the buildings were falling, and I quite enjoyed writing about how you felt.
It taught us about the idea that
not all of the world is kind of perfect because there can be natural disasters anywhere.
Kind of made you think quite a lot more about like putting yourself into someone else's shoes.
I'm Dr. Spring.
I'm Mr. O'Neill.
And this morning we're running a needs and wants auction.
After a natural disaster, we're deciding what things on a certain list are important to us, and then we have to bid for them against other people.
We've broken the children into imaginary families, each of which has come together in a refugee camp. They have a number of items that they must bid for.
The 19 objects only exist individually. We have one block of food, if you like, one block of water. So they've got to decide, essentially, to what extent these things are life-saving.
Randomly selected photographs. We have photographs. You're in a refugee camp, gents and ladies. Sold for 370. 370. Sold 80.
We paid 290 for it because shelter is one of the most important things you need when you're surviving.
We've just paid 360 for food, and we're happy because you can't survive without food because you're going to starve. So
water is important, and you can't live for more than 3 days without water.
If this was a real life situation, we'd be doing okay having one of the 3 of the basic needs in life.
The basic needs of people in crisis are clean water, food, shelter, clothing and safety.
We try to bid for food and water, but lots of other groups try to bid and overbid us by quite a lot of credits.
I think it's enabling the students to actually really consider what needs and wants actually are in their lives. If you compare their fortunate backgrounds compared to what refugees are now going through, which is very much prevalent in the news now.
A lot of people don't have any idea that actually alongside the more well-known things that we do, like in Iraq and Afghanistan, we're also going around the world working with the UN, helping out in disasters and things like that. There's engineers, there's medical people, there's a whole array of different careers there.
I thought it was good because you had the experience of actually being there, so we could have a different perspective of what actually happens there.
I thought it was really interesting because a lot of people get the wrong idea and think that the army is just about killing, but actually most of it's actually about saving lives, not just destroying them.
Bloody battle scene.
The students have just read a story of Henry, and he's the founder of the Red Cross, and they're going to turn it into a storyboard using images rather than words.
Decided to draw some dying people because the Frenchman, Henry, decided to help because he saw all of these dead people that weren't being cared for and dying people that could have caused some disease.
First he sees a battlefield and all the wounded, and then organises everyone so that the wounded get help in a church, and then he goes back to Geneva and spreads the word through writing and talking to people about the atrocities that he's seen and what should be done about it. And then in this last panel we're just going to say how he set up the Red Cross Foundation.
We've learned that the action of just one man can make a really big difference and improve the lives of loads of people.
The activity which we are involved with today is planning a refugee camp. The students have been given a load of different guidelines and criteria to try and design their own refugee camp. Basically giving them a whole list of criteria, things which they need to consider while they're planning them. Obviously they need to think about the tents themselves and the places where the people are going to live. They need to think about the communal areas like the hospitals and the health centres, the registration centres. They need to think about the real practicalities, the latrines, the toilets and things like that.
I didn't realise how difficult it actually was to plan such a big thing like this, and we're only doing it on a small scale, so we do it with about 400 people, whereas in reality it's like tens of thousands.
I didn't really think about how some of the children in the refugee camps didn't want to be there. Like, we watched a video and it made it seem like they really would like, one of them said that they'd rather have died in the fighting than be in the camp.
As you come in through the road, you go straight past the reception and the health centre, So if you're coming in with any injuries, once you pass the reception, you'd be taken straight away to the health centre.
We've got the school near the front, so it's easy to access for most people, as well as the food place.
It's actually very difficult to plan it correctly, and it shows people how much of a crisis it is and how hard it will be, especially for like the UN workers and everyone who actually has to do this in real life.
This is a week which I'm really passionate about because it encapsulates a lot of what we talk about in Truro School and a lot of the things that we are involved in the charity committee as well.
I think World Aims is important because it teaches about the importance of knowing about the world. I enjoy learning about different people around the world.
It's been a chance for us to meet with our houses and kind of work with people we don't usually work with normally.
And we need to take a few days to just realise that other places around the world are not so lucky.
One of the things I've really learned over the last few days is something bad, which is very bad, is happening somewhere in the world, even if you don't hear about it on the news. But something that's on a large scale is always happening, and it's quite eye-opening, really.
Doing World Aims in the past 2 days has really made me think about everything or what's happening other places in the world, and it's been really fun and enjoyable learning about other places.